There was an old king who had a faithful servant. There was nobody in the whole world like this servant. Some said it was because of the armlet he always wore. It was fitted close to his skin. On one side of the golden band were the words, "Armlet, armlet. Who thinks to wear me on his arm, must lack both guile and thought of harm." On the other side the following words could be clearly read, "I am for only one, and he shall be as strong as 10 can be." A time came when the old king felt that his end was near. He summoned the faithful servant and after a discourse, asked him to serve and aid the young king who was to come, as he had served and aided him who was about to go. He wanted him to go all out to please and do the bidding of the young king. The faithful servant promised to do what the old king had asked. After that, the old king shut his eyes and folded his hands. He went the way of those who had gone before him, the way of all the earth. One day, a stranger came to that town from over the hills far away. He brought a frame with him that was covered with a curtain so that nobody could see what was in it. When he came to the palace, he drew aside the curtain to reveal the picture in it to the young king. It was the image of the most beautiful princess in the world. Her eyes were as black as a crow's wing, her cheeks as red as apples, and her skin as white as snow. The picture was so natural that it seemed as though the only thing left for it to do was to open its lips and speak. The young king sat and looked. "Oh my! What a befitting princess!" he exclaimed. "I will never rest till I have her as my wife." "Listen," said the stranger, "this is the likeness of the princess that lives over beyond the 3 rivers. A while ago, she had a wise bird she doted on. This raven knew everything that happened in the world. It could tell the princess whatever she wanted to know." Doted. Doted. The bird is now dead, and the princess does nothing but cry all day and night. She kept the dead bird in a glass casket, and she has promised to marry anyone who will bring a cup of water from the fountain of life, so that the bird may be brought back to life again. This was the story that the stranger told, and then he turned the way he came without another word. The young king was restless on hearing what had happened to the princess who lived over beyond the 3 rivers. His peace went away and grief set in. At last, he called the faithful servant to him. "Can you not get me a cup of the water of life?" "I can't say, but I will try," said the faithful servant. He had not forgotten what he promised the old king on passing away. Out he went into the wide world, to seek what the young king wanted. He went on, until his shoes were dusty and wearing out, and his feet were sore. After a while, he came to the end of the earth, and there was nothing more over the hill. There, he found a little tumbled-down hut. Within the hut sat an aged woman with a distaff, spinning a lump of flax. fountain, distaff, flax. "Good morning, mother," greeted the faithful servant. "Good morning, son, and where are you traveling to that you have come this far?" "Oh, I am hunting for the water of life. I have come this far without finding a drop of it." "Hoity-toity," exclaimed the old woman, "if that is what you are after, then you still have a long way to go yet. The fountain is in the country that lies east of the sun and west of the moon. Only few that have gone there, returned, I can tell you. Besides, there is a great dragon many times your height that keeps watch over the water. You will have to get the better of him before you can touch a drop of it. All the same, if you have made up your mind to go, you may stay here until my sons come home. Perhaps they can give you directions. I am the mother of the four winds of heaven, and it is few places that they have not seen." The faithful servant went in and sat down by the fire to wait till the winds came home. The first that came was the east wind, but he knew nothing of the water of life or the land that lay east of the sun and west of the moon. He had heard folks speak of them, but he had never been there or seen them with his own eyes. The next that came was the south wind, but like his brother he had no knowledge, same for the west wind. Last of all came the north wind. His return was with great announcement and report. He made a hubbub outside the door as he stamped the dust off his feet and came into the house. "Do you know where the fountain of life is, and the country that lies east of the sun and west of the moon?" his mother, the old woman, asked. "Oh, yes," the north wind answered. He had been there once, but it was a long, long time ago. "So, good. Perhaps you will give this lad a lift over there tomorrow," said the old woman. At this, the north wind grumbled and shook his head like a little child would. At last, he said yes. Deep down he was a good-hearted fellow, though his ways were pretty rough. The next morning he took the faithful servant on his back. Away he flew till the man's hair whistled behind him. On they went and on they went and on they flew, until at last they came to the country that lay east of the sun and west of the moon. It took a long, long time before they got there. When the north wind tumbled the faithful servant off his back, he was so weary and torn apart that he could not lift himself up immediately. "Thank you," said the faithful servant. After some time, he tried to pick himself up so he could be on the way for what he came for. "Stop a bit," the north wind said. "Have you ever thought of how you will return after your expedition? There is a popular saying with us which is, before you go, think of your return, but you have not done that. I cannot wait here, because I have other businesses to engage in. Here is a feather. When you want me, cast it into the air and I will not take long to appear." Without another word, the north wind bustled. He had caught his breath again and there was no time to waste. He zoomed off as furiously as he was always known to go. Hubbub, tumble, expedition. The faithful servant walked a great distance until he came to a field covered with sharp rocks and white bones. The bones were those of men before him who had dared to embark on the journey for a cup of the water of life. The faithful servant wondered what chances he had with just his tucked-away sword. This could be a giant creature. He wouldn't want to end up like the other men did. There lay the great fiery dragon in the heat of the sun, sound asleep. The faithful servant took time to inspect him. His length and breadth was awesome. He would be as tall as a castle back home. Maybe he spat out fire too? Not far away was a deep trench like a drain in a swampy field. That was a path that the dragon had made by going to the river for a drink of water every day. The lone man picked up just the right bones and dug a hole in the bottom of the trench. There, he hid himself as snugly as a cricket would in a crack in the kitchen floor, and waited. When the dragon awoke, he found that he was thirsty. He started down to the river for a drink. The faithful servant lay as still as a mouse until the dragon was just above where he was hidden. Then he thrust his sword through its heart exactly, or where it was supposed to be, and drew downwards, on and on. The dragon cried and fell without a fight. There it lay, after a turn here and there, as dead as a stone. The great dragon did not see that coming. Being caught unawares was a bigger strike in itself than the main slice-in of the sword. After that he filled the cup at the fountain, for there was no one to stop him now. He cast the feather in the air, and in minutes, the north wind appeared as fresh and as sound as ever. The north wind took him upon its back, and away it flew until it came home again. The faithful servant thanked all of them, the four winds and the old woman, and as they wanted nothing else, he gave them a few drops of the water of life. This is the reason why the four winds and their mother are as fresh and young now as they were when the world began. The faithful servant set off home again. For joy, it didn't take him long in getting back home like it did in his coming. As soon as the king saw the cup of the water of life, he saddled the horses, and off he and the faithful servant rode to find the princess. They came to the town, and there was the princess mourning and grieving over her bird just as she had done from when it died. When she heard that the king had brought the water of life, she welcomed him as though he were a flower in March. They sprinkled a few drops upon the dead bird, and up it sprang as lively and as well as ever. Now, before the princess would marry the king, she must have a talk with the bird. She could only marry he who had fetched the cup of the water of life and no other. "Go and tell him," the wise bird said, "that you will marry him as soon as he bridles and saddles the wild black horse in the forbidden forest. If he is the hero who found the water of life, he would do that very easily." The princess did as the bird told her. The king was not happy that he would not get what he wanted immediately. After all, he summoned his faithful servant and asked, "Can you saddle and bridle the wild black horse in the forbidden forest for me?" "I do not know, but I will try," the faithful servant replied. He had not forgotten all the while, what he promised the old king. Off he went to the forest to hunt the wild black horse with the saddle over his shoulder and the bridle over his arm. The wild black horse came galloping through the woods like a thunder gust in summer, the ground tumbling under his feet. The faithful servant was ready for him, however. He caught him by the mane and forelock. The wild black horse had never had anyone humble him before, and even that, quite easily. It was quite easy, even though they did stamp and wrestle, up and down, here and there, until fire sparked from the stones under their feet. The wild black horse could not stand against the strength of 10 men, which the strong servant exhibited. He fell on his knees, and the man clapped the saddle on his back and slipped the bridle over his ears. "Listen now," said the servant, "tomorrow, my master the king, will ride you up to the princess' house. If you do not do just as I tell you, you will regret that you ever lived. All the victories you have ever had over the sons of men and beast will be turned to shame, because of all I would do to you. When the king mounts your back, you must stagger and groan, as though you carried a mountain." The horse nodded in agreement to do just what the muscular servant had commanded. Then the faithful servant jumped on his back and rode all the way to the king, who had been waiting at the palace all the time. The next day the king rode up to the princess' castle, and the wild black horse did just as the faithful servant had told him to do. He staggered and groaned, so that everybody cried out, "Look at the great hero riding upon the wild black horse." When the princess saw him, she also thought that he was a great hero. The wise bird, however, thought differently. When the princess wanted to talk to him about marrying the king, the white raven shook his head. "No, no," said he, "there is something wrong here, for the king has baked his cake in somebody else's oven. He never saddled and bridled the wild black horse himself. Listen, you must tell him that you will marry nobody but the man who wears such and such golden armlet, with so and so written on it." The princess told the king what the wise bird had bidden her to say, but the king was not worried. He went straightway to his faithful servant. "You must let me have your armlet," he said to his servant. "Oh no, master, that is a woeful thing to do. The only way to take the armlet off my arm is to cut my arm from off my body." "So what?" said the king, "it is a great pity, but the princess will not marry me if I don't have the armlet." The servant remembered what he had promised the old king. A promise is a debt. He turned to the young king and submitted, "I will give it to you." The king had to cut the arm off, with a little stump just left, from off his shoulder. The armlet was, however, too large for the king to wear. It had come off an arm more muscular than his and so, would not fit. Nevertheless, he tied it to his wrist with a bit of ribbon, and marched off to the princess' castle. "Here is the armlet of gold," he shouted in impatience, "and now, you must marry me." The raven sat on the princess' chair. "Hut! Tut! The armlet does not fit the man." Everybody in the court could see easily enough that this was true. The princess still insisted that she would marry nobody, but the man in whose arm the armlet fit perfectly. Then a hubbub erupted. Everyone who was there was sure that the armlet would fit him, if it fitted nobody else. Surprisingly, it was far too large for the best of them. The faithful servant was very sad. He stood at the back restrained, over by the wall. His injured arm was tied up in a napkin. He did not try to take a chance. Of course, he no longer had the arm where the armlet could be tried on. "You shall try it too," the princess said, but the faithful servant shook his head. He could not try it on as the rest had done, because he had no arm. The wise bird was still there and he knew what it was all about. "See now, and I think we should try. Maybe the water of life will cure one thing as well as the other." Yes, that was true, and a servant in the court was sent to fetch the cup. They sprinkled it on the faithful servant's arm. They did not have to do it twice, for there was another arm as good as and better than the old. A complete arm now in place, they gave him the armlet. He slipped it over his hand, up his wrist to his upper arm, and it fitted him like his own skin. "This is the man for me," said the princess, "and I will have none other." She could clearly see that he was the hero who had been doing all the wonderful things that had happened, even though he had said nothing about himself. The white raven had been proved right once again. She was indeed the wisest bird in the world. As for the king, all that was left for him to do was to pack off home again, and everyone was glad that it turned out right. And this is true, the best packages are not always wrapped up in golden paper and tied with a gay string, and there were better men in the world than kings and princes, fine as they seem to be.
First, if you've not subscribed, just click on the subscribe button. You have a bell by the side there. Click on the bell so that you will be notified anytime we have a new video coming up.